overcomplicated, it gets to just be magical. And I love that for all of us.
Absolutely. Do you know the trick about multiplying by 11s? This is something that you can blow your kids' minds with later.
Oh, just doubling the number, right?
No,
or
like
putting the number next to.
well, yes, but what happens once you get up there? Like, let's say you want to do 11 times 14. The answer is 154. Or 11 times 27, the answer is 297. So how it works,
Oh.
it's the coolest thing on the planet. So when you multiply by 11s, so let's say we do 11 times 17, okay? What you do is you split 17, so the 1 is here and the 7 is here, and then you add them together. So 1 plus 7 is 8, so 11 times 17 is 187. Or 11 times 34 is 374. 3, 4, add them together, and that's the middle number.
My
It's like one of my favorite
things
when I was a kid. Like, I just loved that. I noticed it one time on like some math homework or something, and then I started experimenting number after number after number, and I'm like, oh my God, 11 times 11. 1, 1, 1 plus 1 is 2.
Bam. That is some pattern recognition if I ever heard it.
That's what AI is. And I am the AI quilter. So there we go.
I love that. I love that so much. So I realized when we were like getting ready for this interview that I love quilting, but I love tech even more. Like, I can get just lost in the tech for like design, for business. And that's where I make my like real money in my business. Like, I am a quilt pattern designer, and I have the courses and stuff, but like what I do behind the scenes that you don't see on social media is my like genius. Like, I wake up every day and I do work for like fabric companies, and I'm like, I can't believe they pay me to do this. I cannot believe they pay me to build spreadsheets for ordering bolts from kits. I can't believe they pay me to like build these collections and like repeat processes for them. Like, what is even happening? Is this my life? And I'm like, oh, I make like 2 quilts a year now.
Oh, yeah.
Because it's just all playing in tech these days.
Yeah, well, I mean, welcome to my life. So, yeah, I'm a management and strategy consultant, and I spend most of my day helping companies figure out how to automate things, or how to get seen by search engines, and more importantly, large language models these days. And
oh, that's so cool.
Yeah.
SEO is my favorite.
It is?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Yeah.
It is a nightmare right now, because people are keyword stuffing their websites to try and rank, and get above others, and they're missing out on huge opportunities in other areas. So, yeah.
My biggest claim to fame is that I have helped. I had a local friend who was trying to get off of Etsy and get her Shopify store to be her main source of income. And I was like, pull out your phone right now, and I need to know what keyword you're ranking for. And she was already making 6 figures, and like over a latte, I was like, here's the keywords you need to be using. And we did an analysis, with like, all the numbers pulled up. Like, it took like 30 minutes, made her a spreadsheet of words she needs to be using. She broke her first milli and got off Etsy. And I was like,
that's
amazing. That's right. And I'm like, and I did that for free. I did it for free.
Awesome. Technology is magic. It is practical magic.
I love that.
It's fantastic. And what's funny, so growing up, I wanted to be a high school English teacher.
And,
really?
Yeah.
Yeah, I wanted to be a high school English teacher. So I had a teacher, Mrs. Holzapfel, and we were studying Shakespeare, and we had just read Hamlet. And one of the guys in class convinced her that the movie Strange Brew was actually a modern retelling of Hamlet, much in the way that West Side Story was a retelling of Romeo and Juliet, right? And she didn't believe it. She went home and watched it. And then for like a week during class, we would watch a half hour of Strange Brew and then dissect it in the context of Hamlet. And I fell in love. I fell in love with teaching and I mean, that's not entirely true. I used to assign myself homework as a little kid. I would play school like other people played house when I was little. But in that moment, though, that's when I fell in love with wanting to teach English,
Mhm.
because she allowed us to help chart our own learning path. But when I went to, apply to school, my family was like, that's great. You can go anywhere you want as long as it's Iowa State. And you can major
Oh,
in anything you want as long as it's electrical engineering. And I'm like, oh, cool,
oh.
cool, cool. Yeah, awesome. So that's what I did. And the joke's on them because engineering is one of the most creative, amazing practices that exist, right? Like, it's structural engineers who figured out how to cross major bodies of water.
Mhm.
It's aerodynamics engineers who helped us take to the skies, right? Like, it's amazing.
There are so many women engineers in the quilting industry.
Oh my God, yes,
Like, it's
absolutely.
insane, and they're doing crazy shit in their, in their
Yeah, like
engineering.
Livs Elliott, she's been doing generative pattern design for 20, 30 years. Yeah.
Yeah.
It,
I didn't even know what the internet was when she got started.
yeah,
So, like,
yeah, yeah,
that's
yeah.
crazy. I have another friend who's like the parks something engineer for Kansas City.
Oh,
She designs
wow.
parks, public parks. I'm like, what? How do you get that job,
Right?
ma'am? And
Yeah.
another one who's like, she builds bridges in Germany or something. She designs bridges. And these women are using math and science to build things for the public better, the better good that are
Exactly, to better
beautiful.
the world.
They're beautiful.
Mhm.
And they're like, quilting's the same thing.
It
I was like,
is.
yeah, okay. Nobody's asking me to build a structure that's safe though. So like maybe it's not exactly the same thing.
Yeah, but about things like bias, right?
Mm-hmm.
And
Mm-hmm.
stretch and precision. And although, let's be honest, in modern improv quilting, precision is suggestion, right? But yeah, I mean, all of those things. Quilters, we walk into a quilt shop or an estate sale or a Goodwill or whatever, and we see possibility and we
Mm-hmm.
see things that nobody, like even the people designing the fabric, didn't ever expect would happen, right? Color combinations that come together, or you have a piece of fabric that was your grandmother's that you pair with something you just bought last week and it looks beautiful. I mean, we have vision and we have this insane desire to take perfectly good fabric, chop it all up, and put it back together, and it's more beautiful than how it was when we started, right? I mean, that's engineering. That is a form of engineering, in my opinion.
I think it's magic. It's all magic.
It is magic.
And life changes when you start looking at things that way. I started referring to like my social media feeds as like my manifestation. Like, because the algorithm shows you what you're interested in.
Yes.
And I'm like, ooh, I'm feeling yucky today. Oh, looks like I've manifested some, you know, some
Yes.
garbage. That's my fault because I engaged with the wrong thing. I made a choice and I have to take responsibility for that. And
100%.
same thing, yeah,
It's
all of it.
hard though. It's hard to take responsibility for the icky bits and our part in them.
Yeah, but it's freeing once you do because then you're
It
not
is.
like the algorithm. It's showing me blah blah blah. No, you chose, and you can choose to block.
It's so funny you say that because one pushback that a lot of generative AI has faced is the ugliness that can be created with it. And it's like, well, guess what? There was a human being that created the images off which these platforms are referring to create whatever another human being has prompted it to create. They aren't creating these pornographic or violent images just on their own. Computers are not doing that. What's happening is somebody is asking for them to make them, and there had to have been source images to reference to get an idea of what this person wants to see. So, AI is a mirror. These algorithms are a mirror showing us a really, really ugly part of humanity in some cases. It's also showing us beautiful things, but yeah.
Yeah, it's a lot. Well, and I think because it's available so quickly. it's an amplifier,
It is an amplifier.
It can take like the conglomerate of what's happening and make it bigger fast, like super fast. And I think that's what scares people about AI.
So I worked in the AI industry directly for quite a while. And, we would talk about how bias in the data that these models are getting trained on, if you don't have data ethicists on board, if you don't have systems in place to check the bias of what you're teaching the model, then yeah, you can exacerbate bias at scale. Like in the Chicagoland area, it's very well known, but really anywhere in the United States it was going on. But in the Chicagoland area, the practice of redlining, where banks would deny loans to people of color for certain neighborhoods for absolutely no reason other than that they were a person of color. If those mortgage approval records were then used as training data for an AI that assisted with mortgage approvals today, well, now we are exacerbating that bias and racist behavior and amplifying it at scale, right?
Because no, just like the insurance companies.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's not okay.
No. So, what do you want to know about AI? I can go into the very basics of what is AI even, or
let's start there so that we have like something to grow on for the rest of the conversation. So explain to us like very, very simple terms what AI is.
Okay. So first, let me ask you a question. How long do you think AI has been around?
That's a very loaded question. My understanding of AI is that it's a generative search based, or it's like building on search based models. So for me, like Google would have been AI before AI. Does that make sense? Mm-hmm. So Google reading an algorithm or reading SEO and giving you what you want when you search, like search intent, was kind of the beginning of AI.
That's lovely. However, it's not quite correct. AI has been around since the 50s.
Stop. What?
Let me say that one more time. The 50s. I have
Noodle skirt 50s. Are you sure?
Yes. Artificial intelligence. Now, the name artificial intelligence was codified, I want to say, in 1964, but the technology of artificial intelligence has been around for 70 plus years. I have the whole history in my book. Like, I go through all the different milestones in the history of AI, but it has been around since the 50s. And so one of the things that really breaks my heart, and I actually opened up about it in a blog post 2 weeks ago, and my email list, God bless everyone on it, I got shut down for participating in something because it's really important to us that no AI is used in the making of X. And it's like, hey, hang on a second. I promise you, you are using artificial intelligence and you don't even know you're using it. And you are trying to take a moral high ground that because I am not using image generation platforms as part of my creative process, I'm somehow better than or more, morally pure than the AI quilter, right? It's like, but hang on, no. Let me show you the 97 different ways you've actually used AI in your daily life and possibly in your pattern creation and not even realized you were doing it. And it's because people think that AI is only this one subset of a much broader picture. So let me tell you all about it. I'm going to share my screen and just kind of walk you through the basics so that everybody gets on the same page. Everybody thinks that AI is the Terminator or HAL from 2001: A Space Odyssey, or I'm Gen X. So the movie that terrified me was War Games with Matthew Broderick when he was just a little teenage boy. But, in reality, this is AI. If you use filters, if you use any kind of you make the little funny bunny ears or whatever type of garbage filters you want to use on TikTok, Instagram, wherever, that is artificial intelligence. The lawyer who ended up showing up to a trial during COVID as a cat, that's artificial intelligence. There is so much more at play than just generating an image. And I'm going to talk about 3 types of AI. It's a humongous spectrum of technologies, but I'm going to talk about 3 types, and then we'll talk about where they show up in daily life. The first type is called declarative or imperative AI. And so a lot of people think, for example, a chatbot isn't AI. Turns out it actually is. Even those where you give the chatbot prescripted answers, if they have this word in the question, show these 3 links. If they have this word, then do this. That's a form of imperative AI. And there's some semantic matching. What I mean by semantic matching is it's looking at the question intent to figure out which of maybe 3 links to show when that one word shows up. But the best way to explain what declarative or imperative AI is thinking about the rules that we as human beings live by. If it's raining, take an umbrella. If it's cold, wear a coat. If your shoes are muddy, take them off before you come in the house, right? Those are decisions that we make every day as human beings. And if you think about the airline industry or finance or insurance, there are so many rules that go into the outcomes of major decisions. Like when you apply for a mortgage, they want to know your employment history. They want to know, do you have any big outstanding debts? They want to know your income. They want to know your income to debt ratio. They want to know your credit score. They want to know all of these different things before they're going to give you money. Right now, 50 years ago, there was a banker doing a lot of that. And really, probably 50, 60 years ago, there was a banker and there was a big checklist of questions and a ton of paperwork that you provided. And there were human beings double checking your references and everything like that. Today, there are applications and declarative AI platforms. Enroll is one, Pegasystems, Decisions. There are a ton of them out there that mortgage companies use to codify all of those decisions that used to be done by a human being. That is declarative AI. Same goes for whether or not to approve an insurance claim, right? Before, it was your insurance guy that you knew personally, and he might come out and be like, oh damn, that is, and then go call some contractors, figure out how much it would cost if that tree hit your garage to rebuild your garage and do all of the different things. And man, you haven't had a lot of claims with me in the last few years, so I don't think you're trying to game the system. I don't think you intentionally cut that branch off your tree to crash into your garage and destroy your garage and the cars inside, right? It was all, some human intuition plus some logic to decide whether or not to approve a claim. Well, now all of those rules that we had as human beings, or manuals this thick to figure out, and actuaries to figure out the probability of a tree hitting a garage twice in 10 years, all of that is now codified into a branch of artificial intelligence called declarative AI. Does that make sense?
And so for the people that are listening, what do you mean by codified? Means put into code, right?
Put into code, sorry. Yes, they are the rules by which, yeah. And so, in fact, a lot of these platforms, the people doing the programming aren't actually writing code at all. So that's been another big advancement in the area of artificial intelligence, is that A lot of these platforms, InRule, Decisions, Pegasystems, in a lot of cases, they're very pretty, drag and drop interfaces. There's almost like Excel spreadsheet like tables where they're called decision tables, where you put a bunch of conditions across the top, a bunch more conditions down the left hand side, and then you say, okay, if this happens and this happens, what should happen next? If this happens and this happens, what should happen next? And so you're not literally writing code, rather, you're using these beautiful user interfaces to decide what should happen. Some people use a program called ManyChat on social media so that, you'll post something and you'll go comment milk below to get my latest report on the dangers of raw milk, blah, 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 right? Whatever it is. And then what happens is somebody will comment the word milk. You see a message that says, hey, check your DMs. I just gave you a link, right? All of that is a form of imperative or declarative AI, because behind the scenes, there's this beautiful user interface where you draw lines and say, well, if the person writes milk, then do this. Okay, if they're following, then do this. If they're all of that is a branch of AI. It's less nuanced and fancy than other areas of AI, but it is part of the AI umbrella. Yeah.
And I use those. I love like segmenting your email.
Exactly.
Where you set up conditions. If this thing happens, then this thing happens. And it's beautiful on both ends. Mm-hmm. And I've never had customer complaints about like, oh, you use robots for your stuff. It's helping you get where you need to go faster. Like if you had to wait for me to manually send you links, you'd never get them. Exactly. It'd be a month later and I'd be like, oh yeah, I was supposed to do that. I like interacting with them too. Because
yes. Yeah. It's handy, right? Like if I really want that thing and all I have to do is type a word or post an emoji or do whatever, and I'm going to get some value. Awesome. And let's be honest, us small business people, we do only have so much time in the day. And all of us, are trying to grow email lists. I try and tell this at the end of all of my classes. We as small business people, now maybe you're different. I don't want everybody's email address because I want to spam them. I want everybody's email address or some way to contact them that is not beholden to Mark Zuckerberg or Elon Musk or the whims of whatever social media platform is out there. That is how they first met me, right?
Yeah.
I instead want the agency to be able to contact them if Facebook should go down tomorrow. I don't want someone in between them and me,
Yeah, but you still have it anyway, because like Gmail is a narcissistic bitch when it comes to deliverability and what you're allowed to say in your emails.
You can still directly contact that person and get a phone number.
It's easier.
Get a phone number, get an address. Exactly. Yeah.
I always like to tell people I'm nosy. Like I'm so nosy. If I've ever looked you up online, I know everything about you that there is to know because I'm nosy. And that's why we get email lists, because I want to be able to share the things with other people who are nosy about me.
Yes. Yeah.
Like I don't necessarily want all of my mess doesn't need to be all over the internet on social media. And especially like right now, if you're not posting inflammatory political content, you're not getting seen on social media.
Oh my gosh. Isn't that the truth?
That's what we're interacting with because that's what we want. Right. But like, I want to be able to tell you the things that happened in my week that may be of value to you or funny or relatable in a way that's not where I don't have to perform,
Yeah.
And I'm like, the email list is so much more intimate. Email marketing is intimate. And I love the creators who I follow on social media that send things in email that are like so much more personal.
Well, good.
I love that.
I hope you're on my email list. If you are, you've gotten some pretty personal emails the last month.
I am. I don't know.
If you're not, you should be. And if you're listening, hi, I'm Teresa. I would love for you to join my email.
Same. Same.
Yeah.
Same.
And please join Amy's as well.
Yeah, because we're oversharers.
Yeah, so that's one form of artificial intelligence is those decision automations. Then
Okay.
there's a whole branch of artificial intelligence called predictive AI. So we talked about declarative or imperative. Those are rules-based AI where it is automating the decisions that people make every day so that we can get to results a lot faster. Another branch of AI is predictive AI. And predictive AI is, if you've ever heard the term machine learning, it falls out of that. And there are different types of machine learning models. And I'm going to talk about a few different types, and I'll use really simple terms and analogies so that people can understand what they mean. But I'll talk about supervised learning and unsupervised learning. And when I say supervised or unsupervised, we all immediately go, oh my God, there's nobody watching the store. The machines are going to run, rampant and whatever. It doesn't actually mean that. Supervised and unsupervised, for whatever reason, data scientists use these terms, and what they mean is labels. So think about when we're first teaching a child words. And let's say we have a book of every breed of dog that has ever existed ever. And that is the only picture book that we have. And we're teaching this child first, this is a dog, right? What does a dog say? Then you start teaching the child, well, this one's a Rottweiler, this one's a Dachshund, this one's a Greyhound, this one's a Poodle, right? So now the child is connecting words with images, yeah? And pretty soon you can open up to any page in that book and say, what is this? And maybe the child will say dog because the child doesn't know how specific an answer, you want. And so you might go, yes, that is a dog. What kind of dog is it? And then the child says it's a dachshund. And if that's correct, great. If not, you gently recorrect and say, well, actually, that's a corgi. They both have long bodies, but a dachshund's is longer and, right? And you tell it the differences and you show it and teach it, that child, those nuances. And then later you check again. Hey, what is this? Dog. What kind of dog? That's a corgi. Exactly, that's a corgi. So when we're doing that, it's a type of learning and training that we're doing. Well, remember how we talked about bias a second ago? Let's say now you take that child to the zoo for the first time and it sees a hippopotamus or a giraffe or something else, right? It's only ever seen dogs, and it knows that mom and dad aren't dogs, or mom and mom, or dad and dad aren't dogs. But it doesn't know that anything else with four legs and a tail isn't a dog, right? Because the only data this child has is that something with four legs and a tail is some breed of dog. I just haven't learned that word yet. That's how we can get into trouble with predictive algorithms that exacerbate bias, because if all they have is certain data and nothing else to reference, and then you ask it to make a projection based on that data, it's going to get it wrong. Here's what it looks like in sort of a visual term. You might supervise data. It's basically you give it labels like, here is an example image. Here is the type of fruit that this is. Here is the specific name of the fruit. And you'll give it a bunch of data of some kind, and you tell it what each thing is. And then you might give it an image that it has never seen before and ask it to classify it. What is this thing? And because you've told it that all things that look like this are citrus of some kind, when it sees something that it's never seen before that's green or orange, if it has the same characteristics as the stuff it has seen, it's going to do a best guess and put it with the other citrus fruit. Yeah. So we teach it with data what these things are. It creates a mathematical equation, or more likely a massive program or an algorithm that defines what we've taught it. And then we can present it data it's never seen before, and it will be able to classify it according to the rules that we've given it.
Kind of like the insurance companies do with their decision trees. Yeah.
It goes just a little bit farther than that, in
Okay.
that, so a decision tree is still very fixed. What this is think of Zillow, right? Or
Mhm.
realtor.com. And, you know, those platforms have all of the data of every real estate transaction that's occurred in the last umpteen years, right? And let's say your house isn't currently for sale, or let's say you come across a house and you're curious, well, if that house were for sale right now, what would be the best price to list it at and guarantee a sale within 90 days, right? And real estate agents have access to tools like this. And so what will happen is, think of this spreadsheet in the top left as all of the data of every home sale ever for the last however long. It has zip code, number of bedrooms, square footage. Is the garage attached or not? What's the crime rate? How are the schools rated? How walkable is it? How, all of these different things. And it creates a formula to say, okay, this is roughly what houses are in this zip code at this time. Now you presented a house it's never seen before, that maybe isn't even in the training data at all. And you say, okay, based on everything that I've shown you about the neighborhood that this fictional house is in, and given all of the characteristics that I've given you, which may be incomplete, right? Maybe I only tell you it has 3 bedrooms, 4 bathrooms, and a basement and an attached 2-car garage. I want you to give me an estimate on the sale price of this home. So what it does then is, it isn't rules, it's actually looking at history and making a prediction based on that. Whereas a
Gotcha.
rules engine is, if it's this, it is always that, unless if this, then it's always that. So one is very prescriptive and one is like a weather forecast.
So this type of, I can see where this is useful on a grand scale, but like we're quilters and business owners, we're not Zillow. What is an application of this that we would use?
Inventory forecasting.
Okay.
So a small business owner wants to optimize inventory, figure out. Another great one is what types of collections to buy. What are your
Mhm.
customers actually purchasing? So we as human beings, we look at our QuickBooks or Sage or whatever, platform that we use. We try to figure out, okay, do I have more modern quilters in my customer base or not? Do I, have more traditional quilters? How, art galleries just come out with their new collection. Do I spend my money on that, or do I spend my money on Ruby Star over here, or do I do something else, right? We as human beings do a lot of that intuitive stuff. We look at it and then we try and predict what our customers are going to be interested and want to buy. This type of AI helps with that. So you'll see rolling into all kinds of platforms predictive insights, like the likelihood that invoices are going to get paid on time by certain customers who haven't historically paid on time, right? Like
Mhm.
maybe you want to renegotiate contracts with certain people or whatever. That's where that type of AI is used.
Oh, yeah, yeah. Okay.
And a lot of this is built into systems that we already use. And they're just little features, but it turns out they make a lot of difference. Another part of AI that's really useful is unsupervised learning. So I talked about supervised, where it's all about you teach it certain things. With unsupervised learning, instead of saying, here is all this data and this is exactly what it means, instead, you give it a glob of data and say, tell me what you see. And this unsupervised learning is really, really interesting. I mean, this is most similar to how we are as quilters. We have stashes wherever we keep them. And let's say we buy more fabric. Well, we have to decide, where are we going to put the new fabric? Do we organize our fabric by collection? Do we organize it by like batiks and all other quilting cottons? Do we organize it by color? Do we organize it by yardage, right? Everybody has different ways of organizing their data. Well, there are machine learning models where the machine learning model is presented with a bunch of data and it creates an algorithm based on what it sees. So in this case, it might organize it exactly as we would as human beings, but this is also a valid way to sort it. Put all the green things together, put all the red things together, put all the yellow and the orange things together, right? That is a pattern. That is a viable, understandable way to organize data. This is also a pattern. These are all fruits that have leaves. These ones don't have leaves, so therefore they're in their own bucket. And where this becomes interesting is some of what we're seeing with generative AI. So when I talk about these pattern recognition things, I am talking about when the applications are first programmed by a company like Perplexity or OpenAI or X, right? When they're created, some are created very prescriptively, and others are created a little bit more, for lack of a better term, organically, like this. And what ends up happening is they have tremendous benefit and application in different ways. One of the biggest applications for something like this is, think about a mammogram or an MRI or a CT scan or whatever. We rely on radiologists to detect differences in image. Well, a lot of radiologists now use machine assisted imaging, where an AI will look at the image first and see if there are any anomalies, because AI is incredible at detecting differences, partially because we as human beings are. We gravitate toward people who are similar to us or not. We look for patterns. We see faces in knots of wood, everything like that, right? And because we're like that, artificial intelligence is also like that, like steroids. And it has tremendous benefit, in terms of figuring out fraud. Is this credit card transaction, fraudulent or not? Is this dark spot on this x-ray something that should be tested further? Is this bright white spot on this mammogram just a simple calcification or the beginnings of a tumor?
So when that application for mammograms, so it seems like it's still not completely artificial. Like it has to be trained by something, right?
All artificial intelligence is trained somewhere.
Right.
All
so
of
at
it.
that point, you're taking data that you've pulled from all of the best minds in radiology and telling the artificial intelligence to train itself based on that data. Yes?
Yeah.
Okay. So whereas supervised learning is you're saying, do this, and unsupervised learning is saying, take all of this data and give me new things that I might not have thought of based on things that other people at some point have thought of.
Exactly.
Okay, gotcha. Now, correct me if I'm wrong, but is this how social media algorithms work? Where it takes the data and groups you into, you like fruits with leaves and you don't, or we're grouping people according to buckets that maybe we hadn't thought of ourselves being in?
Absolutely. Absolutely. Advertising, like if you play mobile video games, the ads that I get versus the ads that my better half get are wildly different, even if we're playing the same game, because of what things we pause on, or a lot of mobile video games give you an opportunity to play a sample of whatever game it is. And maybe he skips one, but I play one. Well, now I'm going to get
Yeah.
more ads for games more similar to that because that's a data point about me.
That's where I go back to like algorithms are a manifestation of what you've created. And so if the things you interact with that light you up, you're going to get more of what lights you up. And once you start seeing it that way, like once the algorithm puts you in a bucket of, I want to see meditation videos and yoga and new ways to make coffee, not like, don't give the algorithm a reason to put you in a bucket of, I want to see more Epstein Files videos. Because then you're going to, because then they're putting you in that bucket because you put yourself in that bucket by what you
put
interacted
yourself
with.
in that bucket. I mean, so the thing about AI is it is the cloudiest, most imperfect, and scariest mirror, right? Because it is created by humans to accelerate the types of decisions and anticipations and predictions that we as human beings would make. And in the absence of data ethicists, we're seeing terrible things happen with some of the platforms that are out there.
So, what are we talking about with data ethicists? Like, I get what a data ethicist would be, but what would that look like in reality? Like, how would we go about finding that? Would we train AI to be its own data ethicist? Is this a person that we hire to train AI? Like, what would that look like? Say Instagram and Chat GPT needed a data ethicist. Like, what would that look like in reality?
At most reputable AI companies, there are chief data ethicists, there are chief ethics officers, and they are looking at things like the data that is going into training the model. Where was it sourced? How was it sourced? One of the biggest things, and we can talk about in a moment, is AI is stealing. We'll talk about that. But, hey, what is our ethical position on sampling data from the internet? Do we want to compensate people for the works that we're using to train our models? Does the data that we are giving our model accurately represent what it is that we want to get as far as an output goes? So, as an example, and so there are data ethicists looking at the input. At the programming stage, they're looking to understand if this is truly unbiased information coming in. And then there are data ethicists, data scientists, and whatnot looking at the output. So, one of the companies that I worked for, we made a predictive AI, a machine learning model. And one of the things that you could do is you could give it a bunch of data and then ask it for a prediction. And you could say, what are all of the data points that went into the prediction you gave me? And you could check, like, was gender a top 10 factor? Was age a top 10 factor? What about ability? Like, what were the things that went into the prediction that you made? And, that's really, really important if AI platforms are being used to determine who gets, food assistance, who gets a mortgage or not, who gets access to healthcare, right? You want to know if protected characteristics were, well, formerly protected characteristics were used as part of that decision process or not. Employment decisions, same thing. What were the factors that went into whether or not this person would be extended an offer of employment? And so there are data ethicists and ethicists in general who are employed by the major companies, like the people behind Claude, for example. Claude is an AI platform.
I love Claude.
I love Claude.
I do. I love Claude way more than ChatGPT.
Well, especially now, there are a few things like I'm going to let full stop. Unless something radically changes, I'm letting my ChatGPT subscription expire in August because I buy a year at once. And I'm so disappointed with their most recent model And I'm disappointed by a lot of decisions that their leadership team is making. And we as consumers, one of the levers that we have and hold is a financial one, right? And so we can choose to let the market know where we're going to put our money. And in doing so, incentivize the people in leadership at these companies to make different decisions. And
So can you elaborate on that? So for people who don't really understand or don't, I'm not going to say don't understand, for people who aren't AI experts, what bothers you about ChatGPT specifically?
well, so there's a few things. So one of the things with the most recent models, version 5, that are out right now, it used to be that if you were to use their text generation to maybe clean up something that you've written, or like one of the best uses of AI for me is I'll have a stream of consciousness idea of something that I want to convey. I will just do voice to text. That's a form of AI. I'll dump it into formerly ChatGPT and say, can you organize this in a way that makes sense? I've just given it, verbal diarrhea, and I let it start to put it together in a cohesive position of some kind. Well, with version 5, it has lost my voice. And what do I mean by that? I speak a certain way. I'm from Iowa. I tend to be very plain spoken. I like to simplify things, use examples like storybooks. I'm a quilter, whatever. But pretty much everything that it puts out these days makes me sound like a tech bro. It makes me sound very like masculine and, kind of amped up, like, yeah, that was the worst decision. And she learned from it or whatever. And it's like, no, that's not how I talk.
Have you tried to train it out of doing that?
Yeah.
And it
And it
doesn't work.
just,
So I've had the same complaint with ChatGPT is that I've tried to train it out of being a yes man,
yeah.
like repeatedly. I'm like, do not give me another question. Do not give me another rabbit hole.
Mm-hmm.
Do not make me sound like this.
You know why it does that?
To keep you coming back. I don't
Yeah.
know.
The thing that people forget is that ChatGPT is a product. It is a product and they want you hooked on it. They want you to keep coming back. And so they're going to ask a very helpful question at the end of whatever the statement is, like, would you like me to do X, Y, and Z? Because you may not want that because you are using ChatGPT not as an output, but as an assistive device. But there are plenty of people who are taking whatever ChatGPT outputs whole cloth and putting it into a LinkedIn post, thinking it makes them sound really smart, right? And they will say yes to that next question, and they will say yes to the question after that because they want to use AI as just an output machine. That is what they want it for.
Yeah. But then it's frustrating because it's like scrolling. It's the same like, oh yeah, oh here's another dopamine hit. Okay, now we're getting decreasing returns on these dopamine hits, but I'm going to keep going for it anyway because the next thing might be something that I like.
Absolutely.
We've heard before on various things, if you are not paying for the product, then you are the product.
Mhm.
So I've never paid for AI usage because like I don't use it enough or for anything like elaborate enough to justify the paid product. But then I wondered like when I'm using the free version,
Mhm.
are they mining what I'm doing to sell better answers to the people on the paid versions?
Yes.
I figured. Because the same thing like social media. If you're using social media and you're not paying social media, then they're using you to mine data for people who are paying for that data.
Well, they're using all of the data all of the time, whether you're paying for things or not. It's different types of data. So if you were to actually read the privacy agreement of any social media platform or any AI platform, you would probably be alarmed the level of information that you sign away when you just scroll, hit agree so that you can get whatever it is you want, right? Even most video games these days have privacy policies and user agreements and things that you sign without really thinking because you want to play the game. When you use free versions of AI platforms, often what happens is your conversation is then used as potential training data for the next version of the model. And what that looks like is, let's say you have a stream of consciousness thing, you put that into the platform and say, hey, can you make this sound better? Well, the stream of consciousness thing that you gave it is now the property of that platform company to then use. Now, no one is sitting there reading it whole cloth. No one is going to copy and paste it whole cloth. The way AI works, you mentioned something earlier about search versus AI. Search is a librarian. Generative AI is an artist. Generative AI has generate in its name. It is not taking something whole cloth and regurgitating it in the way that a search engine does. A search engine is looking something up in a database like a librarian and presenting it to you, whereas generative AI is looking possibly at that database, then synthesizing the information into a statement that it has never written before to you to summarize whatever it found. It's like us as quilters going to a quilt show, seeing a bunch of quilts and coming back and having that inform the next pattern we design or the next quilt we make.
Which is how every intellectual evolution ever in the history of the world has happened.
Exactly. So when people tell me that AI is stealing, AI is theft, there's a lot more nuance to it. There is a database called Lion 5B, which literally has 5 billion, that's what the 5B stands for, image text pairs. What I mean by that is publicly available images and the text that is near it, whether it's a caption or it's in the alternative text, if you know SEO, right? So there's alt text for every image that can help your search engine results. If it's a blog post, that blog, there's a URL associated with your blog post that has all that text that has those images on it. There is a database of image text pairs, not the actual image itself, but a link to the image, and not the actual text itself, but a link to the text. It's called Lion 5B. It's open source, and it was available to researchers trying to understand how machines learn, like children, images and words, and connecting those concepts. Because it is a really advanced concept that we all learn in infancy and toddlerhood, but it's really advanced, to connect the idea of, there's a famous painting that says, this is not a pipe, and it's a picture of a pipe, but it isn't a pipe. It is an image, a representation of a pipe, right? But yet we as human beings can understand that nuance that this is a pipe. Well, no, it's not. It's an image of a pipe. It's a representation of a pipe. But when we do see a physical pipe, in reality, we now know that that is a pipe, even though we may have never actually seen it before because we've seen the visual representation. That's how AI works. AI is learning patterns, learning what a cat looks like from having seen 500 million images of different types of cats and text around it explaining that this, in fact, is a cat, right? Yeah, so I get all of this about AI is theft and AI is stealing. No, it's not stealing. However, what happened along the way and what I have a real problem with, and when I have people tell me that I'm unethical, I'm terrible for advocating for AI and all of this stuff, I bristle. What I have a problem with is that data, that open source data, was created so that researchers could use it to develop stuff for the purpose of research and furthering, really good things in the world. What happened is there are people who use that open source data and made money off of it, right? They went and made money off of this training data. And so ChatGPT, Gemini, Midjourney, Stable Diffusion, all of them, especially in the beginning, and Stable Diffusion still, used this publicly available data to train their models. And then they started making money, and that makes a lot of people really uncomfortable. And the thing is, not everybody uses that data set anymore. Not everybody is using uncompensated images. Adobe Firefly is one of the most famous, where they are using images that they have compensated photographers and artists for as their training data set. So when you create an image using Adobe Firefly, you can be assured that the artists whose images were used were compensated for that.
Does that mean there's a much smaller data set?
Mm-hmm. It's a much smaller data set.
Yeah.
The resulting images are not as good without a lot of massaging and a lot of intention in the prompts that you provide. But it is an option, and Adobe backs you. If you use that image then unmodified in commercial work, it is the same as if you had licensed that work from them and bought it. So there are things that are changing.
I feel like you would actually end up with like better images because it's not pulling from every piece of garbage on the internet.
Yeah.
Like once that gets fully built out, I feel like it's going to be better than the free ones that are not licensed.
Well, I'll tell you, it is pretty lovely. I use Firefly quite a bit, and it takes more work on the part of us as users of the platform to get the types of images we want. It's a lot faster, simpler, easier with some of these other platforms that leverage the Lion 5D dataset to throw something in and get something back. You will get a lot more artifacts. You will get a lot more, six fingers, although there's a lot less of that these days. I keep telling people, this is the worst generative AI will ever be. It will only get harder to detect. A lot of people say, well, how will I know if this is AI generated or not? There was that thing in the news like 3 weeks ago. The White House, the US government, on their social media posted an image of a woman being walked out of a protest at a church. And Kristi Noem posted the unedited version, and the photographer who took the picture posted the unedited version. But the White House's official social media accounts posted an altered version of that image showing her crying, and people took that as real.
Well, but you wouldn't know if you hadn't seen the unedited.
Exactly. But again, people decrying that AI is evil and the devil and horrible and no good and very bad. Well, guess what? It wasn't AI that did that. It was a human being with a reason for wanting to push a particular narrative that created that image. And we need to, as humanity, decide that type of stuff just isn't okay. It's not okay.
How do you decide what's not okay when you don't know what's real or fake? So that was one of the biggest reasons that I wanted to do this chat with you, is that I see a lot of AI quilts and I see a lot of AI political images. And the people in our online ecosystem are mostly women over 55. They're quilters. We're crafters. We're creatives. We bake bread and make pretty things with our hands. For the most part, our customers and a lot of other business owners in our space are not like in the tech world to be able to say, and even like I am in the tech world, and there's still times when I'm like, like I can pick out an AI quilt really fast because AI hasn't caught up with quilting enough to produce quilts that look real, like that you still have to give them an input of a real quilt in order to get an output. Like you can use it for mock-ups, but you can't use it to create an image of a quilt that hasn't been made. But there are people who can't tell the difference. Like how do you tell the difference in one, political images, and two, quilts, so that you're not like getting scammed or getting mad over, fake news or whatever? Like, can you walk us through what to look for at this point? I know it's going to change And then maybe also give us your predictions for how it's going to change and what to look for in the future.
Sure. So I would push back gently on the idea that it will create images that you can tell are fake, and you have to give it an image of something real in order for it to create something. This is an AI generated image of a quilt. I prompted it to make sure it used things that looked like fabric. I prompted it to make sure that there are seams that are somewhat visible so that it looks like a human being sewed it. It did, in my opinion, a really pretty good job. Now, I know it's fake. So I am a little bit, biased in that regard, but it is only going to get harder to tell the difference between real and fake. And I think what will happen pretty quickly, and I think we're already starting to see it, is for so long, all of us business owners curated our social media posts and our Etsy listings and our Etsy images and everything like that to look as pristine and well lit and beautiful as this. And I think just like LPs coming back, as a backlash to MP3 and CDs, because I grew up on LPs, 8 tracks, and then cassettes, and then CDs, and then now, right, as a Gen Xer, I think we'll see a sort of a return to a very, very highly analog, very proven that, hey, a real human being did this. There's blood, sweat, and tears involved in this process. That's why I think it's so like when I go to release a pattern, I make sure I'm showing all along the way, yes, AI inspired the image, but look at how much work I, as a human being, did to ensure that this is something that a human being can replicate and do and create and whatever. I think we'll see a big return to that. But how can people tell that they're fake? Well, I actually just posted a thing. I had AI create an image of a quilt inspired by the sea. And it had these lovely curves and waves and whatever in it. And if you zoom in on it, you can tell that there are no seams in places where there most definitely should be one, right? But you have to sit there with a very critical eye and look at it all to see if you can tell a difference. And here's the thing, the way that generative AI works is there are these things called generative adversarial models, where there's a computer that is tasked with trying to trick another computer. And so this computer will either generate an image or select an image that a human created and send it over to the other computer. And then this computer's sole job is to figure out, did a human make it or did, my buddy make it? And for everyone it gets right, it gets a point. For everyone that this one is able to trick, it gets a point. And so they're incentivized in that way. And it's called a generative adversarial network. And so that's why if you look at images generated 5 years ago, they're so obviously worse than an image generated today, because that's how these images are created. So this is the absolute worst it's going to get. And scams perpetrated on our community are only going to get harder to detect. And I think we all know some of the brands out there that are, pitching garbage quilts, things that are completely unsewable. I have AI scams in synthetic voices class, and in it, I teach a framework, stop, just stop. Like if somebody is pitching something that is super inexpensive, is totally adorable and clever and amazing, stop, take a second. Does this look sewable? Is this something that I could do at whatever level of skill I have? That's step one. Stop. Step two, investigate the source. Google the name of the company. Where are they headquartered? Are there other businesses at that location? Is it somebody's house? And this company is portraying themselves as a big brand. Now, I run my business from my home. Other people run their business from their home, but I'm also very transparent about who I am and what I'm doing. But there are some out there who have a big brand and a big presence and everything like that. But if you look, there are like 5 to 7 different businesses all registered at the exact same location, all selling remarkably similar types of things. And you start to see that their accounts are commenting on each other, right? So
Oh,
investigate.
fun.
Yeah, investigate
Yeah.
the source. So stop, investigate the source, find another resource, especially when it comes to politically charged things. But another big thing that I hear more than quilt images is gardening scams. That's the big one right now.
What?
Oh my God, gardening scams. I hear this in every class I teach. Gardening scams are the big one. So, right now, and I want to say again, AI is not the villain in any of these cases. AI just makes it easier for people to scam. Right now, today, gardening scams are one of the biggest problems among our community for a few reasons. Gardening is a very emotional sort of thing, especially if you're working towards being a master gardener or you're just, you're growing something. You believe in the future. You're beautifying an area that once was just brown dirt, right? And people who garden want unique, beautiful things in their gardens. Well, there are people perpetrating scams on these gardeners. They are generating images of flowers and plants that do not exist, but
Oh my
look
gosh.
adjacent to things that do. And then they're using AI to generate Latin names that
What on
sound
earth?
like the hybridization of whatever plant, because a master gardener is going to know what this plant family is. And so they'll generate something that sounds very real.
What are they supposedly selling? Seeds? Like what are
They're selling seeds, they're selling plants, they're selling all different kinds
but
of
what do you
things.
get when you order?
Sesame seeds, sunflower seeds,
Oh,
poppy seeds. You'll get
okay.
sprouts of things that turn out to be weeds. Yeah.
Oh,
And the thing is, if you truly want this beautiful thing in your garden and you're willing to pay $25 to $100, right? And then it's going to take X amount of time for this thing to grow. By the time you figure out that you've been scammed, because it might come in nice packaging that's relatively cheap, by the time you figure out that you've been scammed and that the thing growing in your garden is actually a sunflower and not this other thing that you bought, that company's gone.
yeah. And at that point you're probably gaslighting yourself too. Like, did I plant the wrong thing? Did I drop my sunflower seeds here? That would be me. I'd be like, surely that's probably something I messed up.
Mm-hmm.
Is that what's happening with like AI scams with quilters too? Because I've seen it a lot in clothing pattern companies. Like there are sources online. I don't know if you've delved into this or not. There's sources online where you can basically like patch together a silhouette of what you want to make
Mm.
and it'll produce a pattern for you. And they're terrible. Like the silhouettes are awful. Like they're ugly to start with. I'm like, who's looking at this stuff going, yeah, I'd wear that. And then the patterns that they're producing are not usable. And then they're using AI images to put them on their Etsy listings for $2.31. But then you buy them and then you go to make it and you're like, this is fucking awful. But then you gaslight yourself. You're like, well, maybe I just did something wrong. It's probably me. And so, like, in addition to getting scammed, now you also think that you're bad at gardening or sewing or whatever, because surely I didn't just get scammed. I'd
Right.
rather think I'm bad at gardening or sewing than to think I'm so gullible as to be scammed.
Right? Yeah, because
So it's like a self-perpetuating issue.
it is, because our egos don't want to allow us to think that we're that gullible or whatever. And so we will try and twist ourselves into pretzels. And blame AI at the end of the day. And so what I would say with those patterns that are terrible and whatever is those are a combination of a couple things. One is you could take the time and money to create a purpose-built AI that could do a better job at drafting, certain things. Like if you gave it your measurements at your waist and your hips and everything like that, and then wanted to modify a pattern to fit you a little bit better, I am sure that with enough intention and knowledge, you could automate certain decisions around that, like what size dart to make and where to place it and things like that. I think that that is likely possible.
These early models, though, are terrible. Oh, they're terrible. Like, I can see where it's headed, but woo, right now it's awful.
Well, first of all, you've got to have someone with the appetite and the education to take the time to build better models for that. And then, two, in the case of something like that, you also have to have whoever is selling that pattern has to have the time and desire to improve on whatever output the AI generates, right? So, like when I create a pattern, I will take an image from AI, and that is just my starting point. I draw every single line on every one of my patterns. AI isn't doing that for me. I will test every single color. I will make sure that every letter, every number, everything, that's my time investment to make sure. Whereas with some of these that are $2.31, they are essentially taking a general purpose AI's output and passing that off as a pattern, right? We aren't there yet. We just aren't there yet to use certain AI output just whole cloth. In my book, I have a whole thing because I asked AI to create a pattern that was terrible. Well, yeah, you have to be so intentional, and it would be pages long description, because think about every single decision a pattern designer has to make as they're writing. Well, gosh, how do I describe how to join a Y seam, or how do I describe how to sew a curve if somebody's never sewn a curve before? How do I, like, do I want Y seams in my pattern? Do I want, there are so many intuitive decisions that we're making as designers all along the process.
We would have to take that intuition and turn it into words.
Exactly.
But that's what we do, is we take our intuition and turn it into words. That's how we create patterns. So would loading our sewing patterns or our quilting patterns into AI be enough to train it? Since it is taking those intuition that we turned into words for our customers, would then teach AI to do those same decisions. Does that make sense?
Well, it does. So there's a nuance there. So anytime that we take our patterns, and there's this idea of training an AI like ChatGPT, Claude, whatever, Gemini. You can create these projects, or with Gemini, they're called gems, and you can give it all of the patterns you've written previously, and then ask it to create a pattern based on those. You are still using a general purpose model, GPT-5 or Nano Banana or Opus 4.6 or whatever. Those are general purpose models that were created from millions of text inputs that have absolutely nothing to do with the 15 patterns you upload.
So you would need to build your own model that's just for that. Who's going to do that?
That's what I mean. Now, here's the thing. It's called triple AI, and I can't remember what the three A's stand. The last A is artificial, obviously, but I can't. American Association of Artificial Intelligence or something like that. There was a paper presented on how one might go about creating a purpose-built model for the purpose of generating patterns, like sewing patterns. But in order to create something that works, you would have to feed it every Butterick pattern and Vogue pattern and McCall's pattern and Simplicity pattern.
What would the time and expense be? You could use like Claude or ChatGPT for that, right? Like you would have to have the most expensive plan.
So you are still using that general purpose model. So what happens when we upload knowledge, when we, put our own patterns up in there and say, hey, follow this as a rough guideline for my voice and my style and this, that, and the other. What's happening is there is something called RAG, retrieval augmented generation.
Okay.
So what's happening is you're still using a very general purpose model for everything. But what it does is it looks at what you've done sort of as a reference, but it isn't a specialist in any one thing, So like when radiologists are using machine assisted visual, systems, they're using models that are purpose built for finding cancer or finding breaks or finding.
So this isn't a ChatGPT that they've trained. This is their own something that they have built from scratch.
Exactly.
And people are like talking about like, the insurance companies are now using AI for decisions, which I think is absolutely fucking despicable.
But no, hang on. They've been using AI for decisions since the 70s and 80s. This is not new.
But it feels like they're eliminating so much of the human element. But people are now getting denied for things that they weren't before. Is that because they're tightening what they're willing to pay for?
Exactly.
It's not because AI is eliminating. It's because the person training the AI has made shitty decisions.
Exactly.
Gotcha.
It's policy decisions that the AI is simply enforcing. It is not because of AI. So many people get so angry at AI, and it's like, hang on, no, it's the billionaires and gajillionaires who want to increase profits. If you ever want to like just get infuriated, watch AOC's takedown of the president of CVS, because CVS owns clinics. They actually own an insurance company, and then they own the pharmacies, right? So they own the prescriber. They own whether or not to approve that prescription, and they own the dispensation of that prescription. That's not AI.
Can we take a moment to acknowledge that in the early 90s, Microsoft got broken up for monopolizing because they owned the computers and the operating systems?
Can we look at Northwestern Bell and the entire Bell telephone system getting broken up?
That was nothing. Now we have things that are way bigger and way more out of hand, and everybody's just like, yeah, it seems legit.
Well,
but then we're blaming AI.
It's good business. It's insightful. It's vertical integration. It's magic. It's great.
So now, and also people are mad about AI because they don't understand it. So people are talking about how doctors are using ChatGPT to pass medical school. No,
that's not. That's not true. That's just.
And then I feel like a lot of the people that are really mad about how awful ChatGPT is are assuming that the doctors that are using it to pass medical school are using it the same way they are, which is basically as a second Google.
Exactly.
You don't know how to use ChatGPT to its fullest potential. Never mind build something that can be used to its fullest potential. So you think that doctors are using ChatGPT the same way you are.
Okay, so I get that one a lot too. Kids are using it in school. Kids are using it to write papers. Absolutely. Yep. Guess what? When I was a kid and we were asked to write a paper on, let's say, Amsterdam, right? You had to write an outline, then you had to write a paper, you had to do whatever, right? Learn all about the culture of Amsterdam and what's going on in the canals and the bike culture and blah, blah, blah. Okay. I probably did the homework because I was a little brown noser, right? And I probably did the homework and I looked up different sources and did my whole thing. Whereas Chad over here, he would grab the World Book Encyclopedia and a thesaurus and go to town writing a paper by simply plagiarizing the encyclopedia and thinking he was smart enough right? By changing some words using the thesaurus to make a paper about Amsterdam. Now, here's the thing, teachers know the difference. Teachers can tell that Chad, who hasn't passed a spelling test for the last semester, is suddenly waxing poetic and eloquent about Amsterdam. Chances are Chad is cheating. Similarly, if there are students who are taking the time to write the paper versus kids who are using ChatGPT to write their paper, it's going to become pretty obvious pretty quickly.
There's also, I'm sure you know this, there's AI that's plugged into their grading software that shows you like the keystrokes, how long it took to write the paper. So if you're copying and pasting, you're going to flunk because they already know. They can tell by your keystrokes. If you're going to copy a paper from chat, you think you're going to copy your dissertation from Chat GPT, you have to physically type it out. It would honestly be easier just to do the damn research.
Do the damn research, because what'll happen too, what often happens is you're halfway down copying whatever garbage came out of ChatGPT, which, okay, we've slammed on ChatGPT a lot today. There is a lot that is so good about these technologies. It has cut so much time out of my life. I can very rapidly iterate tons of ideas in text or visually all day long. I use these different technologies. You know, you mentioned you don't have paid versions of any of them. I've got paid versions of almost all of them. I genuinely find tremendous benefit in using AI as part of my daily life. And when I say using AI as part of my daily life, I'm not talking about all of the other ways that we all use AI. If you use Waze or Apple Maps or Google Maps, any kind of map software that includes an ETA, you're using artificial intelligence. If you use Canva and you remove the background on an image, you used AI, edge detection software, in order to remove the background to make your image prettier for your pattern or your Etsy shop or your social media. If you,
Yeah.
you know, there are so many ways that we use AI every day. I will say, add sugar to the shopping list to Siri, and it gets added. That's AI. That's speech to text.
I love that. We use Siri for like almost all of our homeschooling.
Yeah.
We're learning about ancient Greece right now. And I'm like, something like these timelines aren't adding up for me based on what I remember from learning when I was a kid. And I'm like, hold on, what's going on? And then you're just like, hey, Siri, tell me what happened significantly in ancient Greece between these dates and these dates. And then my brain and my kids' brains are now making connections.
Exactly. They're lighting up in new, amazing ways because
we're learning new things
exactly.
with information that was given to us. And we're not ChatGPT isn't cheating. It's not cheating because we didn't go drive to the library and look up books on ancient Greece. Do we do that too? Yes, because it's freaking cool and it's fun. But like we use it for oh my gosh, my favorite application for AI like on a daily basis is when we come home from wrestling practice at 10 p.m. We're hungry, grocery stores are closed, and I'm like, we have very little food in the house. Here's the ingredients that I have in my pantry and my refrigerator right now. Can you build me a recipe to use them? I'm a very good cook. I'm super inventive and creative, but sometimes you just don't have the freaking brain space, and it beats the hell out of a frozen pizza.
Absolutely.
And that frees up brain space for me to go work. That frees up brain space for me to go spend time with my kids because I didn't use up all of my energy on something that, for all intents and purposes, really only matters for the next 20 minutes.
Yeah, and the thing is, it's the villainization cycle that has always existed since the beginning of time. I mean, when the sewing machine was invented, French tailors burned down a sewing machine manufacturing facility because they were afraid it was going to ruin their craft. When the rotary cutter came out in the 80s, people were like, that's dangerous, that's cheating.
Oh, they are dangerous.
They are
very
dangerous.
dangerous.
Absolutely.
But I've also hurt myself equally as bad with scissors. So
yeah. Well, what I always say is, AI is a tool, just like a seam ripper is a tool, right? And a seam ripper is handy when you use it for the right reasons. But if I stabbed you in an eyeball with my seam ripper, that it's now a weapon. AI is exactly the same way. It is incredibly handy, but understand its purpose in your process, right? That's why I was very intentional about the title of my first book, which was using AI as part of your creative process. It is not your entire process. It should not be your entire process. It is another assistive device in service of something that remains incredibly personal and holy, which is the creation of art, writing, quilts, whatever. It even forecasting your fabric buys. You want to do the best you can as a shop owner or, an online shop owner. You want to make the best financial decisions possible so that you can serve your customers better.
Yeah. So my first quilt market before I was working for fabric companies was one of my friends and quilt designers. I didn't realize her husband also they own a fabric shop separately from her design business. And I'm like, man, they always have these beautifully curated, it's not my style, but I really appreciate the fact that they have such a curated style as a shop. And he shows up to pre-order their fabrics, and he has spreadsheets that he's built from scratch that do this predictive, if we sold so many bolts of this type of thing, then we will sell so many bolts of the next thing from this designer, or these colors do best, or these prints do best. We do better with more hero prints and less blenders, or vice versa. And he built this from scratch. So he built this I can't remember which version of AI it would be. Predictive. Anyway,
Yeah,
he built a spreadsheet, and he shows up with numbers. He doesn't show up with vibes. He shows up with fucking numbers. And that's
exactly.
how they're putting all their 4 children through college with
Yes.
cash, is because
Forecasting. He's
he built this.
forecasting demand. Yeah.
But now people are up in arms because it's cheating if something builds this for you, versus it's like my parents saying you can't learn to drive an automatic until you learn to drive a stick. Why?
It is putting martyrdom and struggle on an altar,
Yeah.
right? It is saying that somehow the struggle is what is important, when in fact, I'm sorry, but I'm not going to sit there and tell a friend of mine who's a new mother how many times I had to rip out certain seams in order to get in, and how late I stayed up at night, and how much I suffered to make this gift for them. And if that is part of my relationship with this person, then what does that say about that relationship? That
It's
I have to
toxic.
suffer in order to share my creativity.
Yeah.
I get that a lot. Like when I did a couple podcasts and they were published on YouTube, people would be like, well, just learn to draw. Because I'll often say, I can't draw a stick figure to save my life. Well, then learn. Do you think I haven't tried?
This is the same lady who found patterns in multiplication tables. Your brain is not wired for
It's not.
art. Yeah.
But I know what I like. I know what I want to create. I use words to convey the image that I want to make. Sometimes I'll draw a really terrible depiction of what I'm trying to do, and then I ask AI to refine it for me. We have said repeatedly that things are cheating all along the way. Hand quilters, way back in the 1800s, bitched and complained when the sewing machine was invented. Guess what? The sewing machine actually took the invisible women's work out of the home and made it visible. And where is the moral outrage today with quilters that we're all using sewing machines? It's not here, because we've been through the villainization cycle of sewing machines already. And there is still a place for hand piecing, hand quilting, hand whatever. But there's also a place for those of us who use machines to piece. Similarly, when the long arm machine was first invented, well, that's not fair, because I have to suffer through rolling my king-sized quilt up in such a way that it fits in the small neck of my domestic sewing machine, right? Well, now some people can afford to use a long arm in their home. Okay, well, that's cheating. That's not fair. Then computerized quilting came, right? In each one of these, we sit here as quilters and shame and moralize people who are using technology to advance the craft. And yet we all
Yeah, the
benefit.
people who are using computerized machines, that takes their physical labor out of it so that they can now sell that service to us cheaper. It made it
Exactly.
more
We
accessible.
villainize and moralize all of these assistive technologies that are actually keeping costs lower for us, helping us do more of the things we enjoy, which for some of us, it is getting to the flimsy and we want to be done because it
Mm-hmm.
stresses us out to figure out how to quilt it,
Because
right?
basting's the fucking worst.
Oh.
If anybody enjoys basting, like, let me know. I don't know anybody that's like, I can't wait to baste this quilt. Ugh, it's the worst. And I have had things long armed, and I enjoy the quilting process. I enjoy
Yeah,
quilting, like
yeah.
the quilting process. But I have boxes and boxes of flimsies that have not been quilted because I cannot make myself baste them.
Really? Now, see, for me,
Yes.
I don't mind the basting. I do get really, really stressed just before my very first stitch when I'm about to long arm something. I don't have a
Mm-hmm.
computerized long arm, so everything I do is free motion if I'm going to do it. And I go through imposter syndrome and what if I do it wrong or what if I don't like it or I just spent all of this time piecing this whole thing. What if, right? But who are we to sit here and villainize and moralize? I sometimes feel like I am a witch at the Salem witch trials, right? I'm an independent woman who holds land and has money. Therefore, I must be terrible and horrible and should be burned at the stake. Not because I was actually a horrible, terrible person for having land and my own money, but because there were people who didn't like the fact that I did, like
Yeah. In your own industry.
in my, and who are we to judge? So if we were to say that, well, I don't mean the type of AI that helps me remove the background from an image. Okay, well, guess what? That AI, the edge detection algorithms, are part of the same family that is used to create edges in an image that might get drawn. So, who is going to decide what AI is worthy and what AI should be outlawed? What AI is fair and what AI is not? Instead, what we should do is vote with our money. So,
Mm-hmm.
pick platforms that are more in alignment with your ethics because guess what? The ones that aren't are going to notice where the money's going and decide that they want some of your money and they're going to make adjustments. We've already seen it. We have mechanisms now. I wrote a blog post and linked to this thing. It's like an ethics toolbox. So I recommend some different platforms that are more in alignment with artists. So places like Firefly, Claude, which is from Anthropic. Anthropic has what they call constitutional AI. It is a whole set of directives that are in greater alignment with ethical practices than, for example, Grok, who, X's offices were just raided in France because of some of the horrible, terrible things that were being perpetrated on X as a result of the very lax guidelines that Grok, which is Elon Musk's AI, has access to. So,
Side note on that, did you see my story about Paris Hilton and
no.
getting early on, like in like Photoshop days,
Oh,
somebody
yeah.
took a picture of her and basically put her face on some really horrible porn.
Images. Yeah.
And she got bipartisan. I think it's made it through one part of the process, but she's now getting to the second, almost unanimously passed, where it's a law that makes it where if someone does that, you can sue them both criminally and civilly if someone
What?
uses AI on your image.
That's awesome. See,
And I'm
that's
like,
fantastic.
girl, now run for president.
Yeah.
You got my vote. I
Yeah.
don't care. You show up in the White House with your titties popping out of a blazer. I'm voting for you. I love it. Like we're here for tiny dogs and lawsuits, like Elle Woods style. I'm
Yes,
all over it.
yes,
But
absolutely.
yeah, so that happened like right as Grok hit the news, also with its lovely thing that they invented.
But again, let's remember the AI did not, did not just organically decide to create that image. Somebody prompted it, somebody prompted it to do that thing, and that person should be held liable if they are doing
So how do you
horrible.
trace that though? Like how do you trace an image back to the person that created it? Like I'm techie, but I'm not techie enough to go like dark web finding who made an image. Is there a way to do that?
So, few things. Number one, remember what I said earlier, these are all products, right? And
Mm-hmm.
a username is attached to your account when you generate an image on a given platform. And there are standards being bandied about, like there is metadata embedded in the images that reputable platforms create. So like there is information. If I were to create an image on ChatGPT or with Nano Banana and Gemini actually watermarks their images. In the lower right hand corner, there's a little star that indicates that it was created by AI. But embedded inside the image, because it's a digital file, right? Embedded in the digital file, there is information to say that, hey, AI created this. And then if you wanted to, I'm sure you could go to whatever company, whatever platform, and say, hey, the metadata says that this was created by your company. Please go find out which account created it, right? And then from there, you can start to dissect what might be going on. Because,
I feel like though, like all you have to do is take a screenshot or like erase the metadata to get around that. Is that a thing?
well, erasing the metadata, you would have to be pretty highly skilled. Yeah.
Because I mean, but people are. I'm saying if I was going to be like
Yeah, if
running
you're going to be
a,
horrible and terrible, look,
I'm going to have some
the instant
protections
we
in place.
regulate, criminals are going to find a way around the regulation, right? So we can only advocate for the guidelines. And then it is up to us as a community and as a society to abide by them. But people are always going to get around it. They're always
Yeah.
going to get around it. Absolutely.
And the thing is, they're only willing to do that because there's a market for it.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so like let's now prosecute the market like harshly, you know. So that's the other thing that I've heard left and right is that the Epstein files are fake, and I'm like, first of all, what kind of system would you have to build to fake something that's that fucking poorly written with like all of the email back and forth thread garbage, you know? And like, I haven't personally gotten into any of it. I don't want to. I don't need to.
You
Victims
don't want.
standing up and raising their hands, like I'm good. Okay. And I feel like if you're digging that far into the files, you're looking for chaos. You're looking for something to be mad about when victims have stood up and raised their hands. That's all you need. I'm not looking to dysregulate myself because I don't need details. It's like slowing down to stare at a car crash with a dead body hanging out of the car. You're not feeling sorry for the victim. You're addicted to chaos. And I will say that really loud for anybody who thinks that they need to read all however many million pages to be informed. No, you don't. Believe the victims and move on. And that's part of how our algorithms get trained is because we are addicted to like the train wreck chaos of it. Are posts from the victims or about the victims getting traction on social media? No, because compassion is slow and it's boring.
Well, same with environmental outrage over AI. So
Yeah.
I've gotten several messages, but I got a message from somebody I love and trust who forwarded me a social post about, hey, AI is terrible for the environment. Entire towns are losing their water systems. Look at this, look at that, whatever. Right. And it is so complicated. It is so complicated. I'll send you a link to an article I wrote for LinkedIn about the environmental water crisis. And the thing is, one of the primary sources that a lot of people use and point to for their outrage. The woman had to release a correction in December that she had outsized the water consumption numbers in her book, which, let's just think about this for a second. She's MIT educated. The publisher and the editors had to read it. Then several major publications before it was released also had to read and fact check it, and nobody caught any of the problem.
I don't know what you're referring to specifically, but if she's MIT educated, was she not in a position for peer review?
Yeah, and nobody
and it passed peer review.
No, 4,500x. She was off by 4,500. It's not like she was off by a decimal point. She was off by 4,500. It was awful. But here's the thing. The outrage gets the headlines. The correction is in the bottom at page 16, right? After the obituaries in the newspaper. That's how it always is, right? And so there is no corrections really like getting out there and getting all of the numbers. But yeah, I get a lot of, it's horrible for the environment. Well, let me tell you. So the most often touted number is 500 milliliters of water every AI conversation. Well, no, that's not quite true. It's 500 milliliters of water is the rough average for upwards of 20 to 50 messages with an AI chatbot platform. Okay.
So tell me what's 500, what'd you say, milliliters of water? What is that
500
equivalent?
milliliters of water. It's a half liter of water. So a small water bottle.
Half of a Dasani?
Yeah. Yeah. Half of a Dasani. Okay.
Okay.
But that's 20 to 50 messages with an AI platform. I can generate an image that is beautiful and something that I would take into design with a single prompt.
But most people can't. So we're talking, I mean, there's a lot of people who will spend 8 hours a day sitting here.
Let's talk about it, right? So yeah, a lot of people will iterate several times. So 20 to 50 messages, okay? A single hamburger is 2,500 liters of water.
Like total, like raising the fodder, raising the cow, slaughterhouse operations, shipping. We're not even going to talk about the environmental impact of the shipping and refrigeration, which is not a water thing. Refrigeration is a whole entire separate environmental.
And also, that water is potable. It's drinkable, right? Because the cows have to drink potable water.
Right.
The majority of the water being used in cooling systems is non-potable water. And oftentimes it is returned cleaner than when it went into the systems because certain countries especially have environmental regulations that say that you can't return the water dirtier, that, stuff like that.
Sure. Yeah. Thank goodness.
A yard of cotton fabric, for it to be dyed, I'm just talking about the wet processing. I'm not talking about the growing the cotton and everything else. A yard of fabric to be dyed takes anywhere from 8 to 23 liters of water. A t-shirt, a simple cotton t-shirt, 2,700 liters of water.
It's insane.
A golf course, an 18-hole golf course consumes on average 380,000 liters to 1.5 million liters of water, not in a season, but in a day, to keep it beautiful and green, right?
It's so crazy.
An AI platform does consume an amount of water that is lost as steam in a data center, but it is likely non-potable water, undrinkable anyway.
Where does it come from if it's non-potable?
It tends to be wastewater.
Oh, good. Pee-pee. All right. Love that for us. So if that water, and I'm not educated, obviously, on.
Yeah. I have a whole white paper where everything is linked.
Awesome. If that water wasn't, where would that go if it didn't go to the data centers? Would it be treated and turned back into potable water at some point?
It might be treated. It might be treated
or
into
would
your
it just
drinking
be,
water.
I don't know. Again, I'm not educated on these things. It doesn't occur to me to ask what happens to my pee pee after I flush. And also I'm on a septic, so I'm like, I don't even, whatever. I know exactly where my pee pee goes. It's not going into treatment centers, that's for sure. It's growing pumpkin seeds in the backyard where the chickens eat our leftovers and poop all over where the septic goes. Grow the best vegetables when they come out of.
You know what? I have septic for the first time in my life, and I have no idea what I'm doing. I may ask you a bunch of questions later.
Be very careful with, most things are fine, like oil buildup. And if you use natural or like environmentally friendly products, they tend to have oils in them, like Dr. Bronner's soap. Any of your like more organic soaps tend to have oil or be oil based, and they will destroy your septic system. So like I make my own laundry soap. We use environmentally friendly like dish soap and stuff like that.
Mhm.
But we make sure there's no oil in it. Like that's the only thing. Ours has been healthy. We replaced it about 6 years ago. And we've
Do
never
you?
had to treat
Somebody
it.
told me that you have to like flush something once a month to help
We
the
never have.
bacteria. Okay.
We also like if you have something in your house that's high antibiotic, like if you're taking a lot of antibiotics, if you use a lot of like antibacterial soaps, which we do use antibacterial things, but it's like surface cleaners. Like we don't use a lot of
Yeah.
antibacterial soaps. So like the antibacterial stuff we use isn't going into the septic, it's going in the trash. Which is probably a whole other issue, but listen, raw chicken juice is nothing to fuck with. Okay, so we're gonna pick our battles here and not get salmonella. Um, no, ours it's been fine.
It's been fine.
We radically just keep oils and antibacterial stuff out of our water systems. If you're going to use antibacterial like on your hands, use a wipe or something.
Got
And then
it.
we don't have to use like the high powered antibacterial dish soap and stuff because we have a dishwasher that gets hot enough to do the
Right.
things. And then peroxide and vinegar
Yeah.
for most things. So it keeps it healthy. And we like if you have somebody that's on cancer treatment, it'll destroy your septic. People with like major health problems take a lot of prescription medications, can potentially mess it up, but
Got it. Got it.
barring that, no.
Interesting. Yeah,
Yeah.
no, it's been an adventure. I have a feeling I'm going to be replacing some like pipe from the house to the septic here
Yeah.
soon because we had it back up twice. It's so much fun.
Oh no. Yeah, I mean you can get it pumped. Like you can call your local septic person and get it pumped. It's not cheap. It's like $400.
Yeah.
And if that doesn't work, we've dug up our lines and replaced them too.
It's the lines, the we had someone look at the actual septic system, and the system, like the field and the tank and everything is all
Mhm.
fine. But we have tons of trees and
Mhm.
they're older, and I think the roots have crushed the pipe
Yeah.
itself.
Yep. It happens. And what they replace it with now is like so much more flexible than the old pipes were. So like if you replace them now, you won't have to replace them again anytime
Yeah.
soon, even if roots grow around them. Like we put PEX in almost everywhere that we can. I don't know if that's what they put in the septic. I wasn't there for that part of it, but we have tree roots too. And like everything we've replaced with the flexible pipe stuff. And we're just like, well, you know, it's a lot easier to maintain. Yeah.
Nice. But yeah, so I have a white paper called Thirsty Intelligence. Everything is linked. I full
Okay.
transparency. Like I have a bibliography. See, I'm the kid,
Hmm.
brown nose.
That was me.
Uh, where I have a bibliography of all of my research because somebody asked me, and they're like, what do you think about this? And people quote that water bottle thing all the time, but even to create that water bottle, it took 200 liters of water. So like, okay, be outraged at the 500 milliliters that was used for a series of conversations with AI, but take a look around. Literally everything uses energy and water. And AI is not the only resident in these data centers. AI is getting all of the press, but we're on Zoom right now. Zoom is
Hmm.
in the cloud. The cloud is a data center somewhere in Des Moines, Iowa, right? We use the internet. The internet is in the cloud. The cloud is a data center in Moline, Illinois, right? Like,
I think where people's
yeah,
concern comes from like, where does it stop? At what point is the internet and AI so big that there's a data center every mile. And they're using all of our natural resources for things that are basically fake. Like we're using non-renewable resources because water is renewable to a certain point, but like, then it's not.
At some point it's not.
Yeah. I think that's where people are concerned, is not with where we are now, but like what it's going to lead to. And I don't think it's going to get that far, because I think at some point we're going to get bored with technology. We're already seeing it, and go back to a resurgence of radically human things, getting our hands in the dirt,
things.
making
absolutely. But here's the thing, like, let's go with the low end. 380,000 liters of water a day for an 18-hole golf course that only an elite few are going to use. And the tax benefits of that golf course are minuscule compared with the same, well, not even amount of water being used by a data center in the same community, right? Infinitely less water being consumed, but higher tax benefit in terms of employment and other things. Because again, that data center isn't just AI. That data center is also maybe housing the United Airlines ticketing system, or, BMO Bank's fraud detection system, or whatever. Like, it is employing people versus this leisure activity for only a few folk who can afford the fees to join the club. And yet it's pouring 380,000 liters of water to keep it lovely and green. Like, I get what you're saying, but I'm just very frustrated at this imbalance, but again, outrage sells clicks, and that's what news outlets want us to do.
Right. When you start getting news from places that don't get paid per click, it changes everything. I did an experiment with our weather this year, where I was like, you know what? Instead of believing the news stations or social media, I'm going to get my weather from the National Weather Service that does not get paid for clicks. The nearest station is the lake a few miles from here. And I was like, I'm just going to stay on their weather forecasting, where everybody else is like, you're going to get an inch of ice and 24 inches of snow and power outages everywhere. And then the National Weather Service, that does not get paid for ads, they were like 8 to 12 inches of snow, no ice. You're going to get snowed in, but you'll be fine. And I was like, let's just experiment and like just completely step away from social media and just go with like who doesn't get paid. And turns out they were accurate. Like across the country, everybody's National Weather Service was more accurate. And I was like, huh. So I do have to ask, like, here we had a data center recently stopped from being built on account of we didn't have the water structure to support it. It was going to be built with, basically they were getting tax-free land.
Yeah, that's profiteering, and
and it wasn't going to bring jobs. Like they were looking at they were basically getting tax-free land, free water usage, and it was only going to create a handful of jobs. And they were like, so it got shut down because the town was like, fuck that. Like there's no benefit to us. You're taking our natural resources or our PP water, whatever, but not giving back, income wise. There's no benefits to us.
Pollution associated with that, with data centers and other things. I am not saying that any of this is perfect by any means, but at the same time, like, what I think we need to do is put some civil engineering thought around how we're going to plan our communities for data centers, because we figured it out for sewage treatment plants.
Right. But we're not there yet. I think that's what bothers people. We're not there yet. It's still new and scary. Mm-hmm. It's the big monster in the corner.
Yeah.
Because we just haven't caught up.
Exactly. I mean, because we can't imagine it now, because wastewater treatment plants have been around for so long in the United States and in our communities, right? Or we have septic systems or whatever, but there are civil planning laws that determine how close housing communities can be to a wastewater treatment plant, what kind of odor mitigation and other things that those things have to have in place. Same with landfills, and where homes can be and schools can be relative to a landfill and everything like that. And like the methane release pipes that are on landfills and everything. So what we need to do is talk to our local governments, our representatives, and everything like that, and fight for those types of regulations now, so that we have safe placement of data centers. We make sure that we're not giving tax breaks the way we do to the ultra wealthy, sports team owners who want to, build stadiums in towns, and they get tax breaks forever, and then the instant the tax breaks end, they move to a new town and get new free money, right?
Yeah.
And then you have an
That's what's
eyesore
happening
around.
here. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So what we need to do is advocate for regulation. I am not sitting here saying that, data centers are magic and you should live next to one and it's all perfect and good. What I am saying though is they aren't the villain. The villain are the ultra wealthy who are saying that they need more wealth, and they aren't thinking about the communities in which they're trying to build.
And the politicians that are giving it to them.
And the politicians who are giving
Yeah.
We need to elect people who are looking out for and advocating for the people, right? Because we had that at one time. And as a result, we have in certain communities clean drinking water. We don't have food deserts and things like that because we had politicians who care. And so I'm glad that people are fighting for that. But at the same time, there's like, if a company were to pay its fair share for water and for energy and for land for a data center, sure, there aren't going to be jobs at that facility because it is a blackout facility. There is no need for human intervention unless a server goes down. There's not a lot of need for employment at that facility. But what applications are running at that data center, and what jobs does that data center actually support? It might be that that data center is the data center where MRIs are read and ultrasounds are read and mammograms are read. Like that may be the data center that houses the machine learning model that cures cancer. So there is a need for data centers, but there isn't a need for profiteering and all of this garbage and all of these, backdoor deals that are done.
Yeah, and I think that's why ours got shut down. Was they found out that the local, like they all got fired. Were doing like NDAs with these companies. I'm like, you can't be an elected official and do NDAs. That's pretty fucked up.
Yeah. So, yeah. But do you get what I'm saying? So yes,
yeah,
that data center may not employ a ton of people, but when implemented in partnership and with thought, it can provide tax benefits. It can provide employment opportunities indirectly as a result of, so.
Yeah, that makes sense. And I think the biggest takeaway from all of this is that AI technology in general, we tend to fight it when it's new because it's scary and we're afraid of what it's going to mean.
Cycle, absolutely.
Is it going to outsource whatever it is that I currently get paid to do? But at the end of the day, there was an influencer, she's like a spiritual influencer recently, that said she refuses to see things through the lens of scarcity or being afraid. And a lot of it comes from like, we were founded on like Puritan culture, where things are either good or bad, like me or not like me, good versus evil. And then we tend to take that view, and this is getting like really woo woo, like how we see God as like a reward versus punishment system. Everything has to be reward versus punishment. And when you let go of that, and it's hard, especially in the current political climate, it's hard not to see everything through that lens of like, everything has to be justice,
right or
everything
wrong, left or right.
Right.
Just and when you or unjust. Yeah.
When you let go of that and you're able to see things just through the lens of, I have compassion for victims without living in fear or anger over the perpetrators. I can see AI as the next human evolution of what we're able to accomplish without seeing something that's different from my current reality or my belief system as being evil. And the people with the biggest opinions show up the loudest. So that's what we're fed constantly. Those are the people showing up to these town council meetings, or the old men in their overalls that are worried about their cows drinking water or their farm or their whatever. And I'm like, honey, nobody's outsourcing beef. Okay. AI can't make beef. Your farm is fine. I promise.
For now.
You have other things you need to be mad about that you're not mad enough about. but again, like,
Mm-hmm.
do we need to be mad about these things, or do we just need to accept that it's our evolution and we need to be the most compassionate that we can? But taking like a matriarchal view of technology, and people are so scared of technology like stealing their job, which is that's valid. Okay, you
Here's
need
the
money to live.
look, the sewing machine definitely took jobs from tailors who were not able to adapt. And yet there are still tailors. They still exist.
Yeah, but that's different because AI can't at this point sew something. But there are people like my
But
sister
but there
works
are
for
automated sewing machines. There are automated sewing machines. I can get a mass produced quilt.
my sister's where she is. They're getting rid of like 72% of their workforce, including C-suite, because they have built AI to replace them. So like these people now don't have jobs. And
Mhm.
that is a valid concern.
It is.
However,
Look at the auto
again,
industry in the 60s and 70s when
right?
robotics came in.
But we at some point will have to go back to, again, there are radically human things that are never going to go away, that are never ever going to go away. And if you've built a career in tech, you knew from the beginning that at some point you were going to not be in a job anymore.
Mm-hmm.
And it scares me as someone who I love teaching tech. And there's a reason I've decided not to build my entire platform and career in tech, because I realize that at some point I'm going to hit a wall of what I can and can't do, and it will be replaced by things that are automated. You see it over and over and over. And I'm like, I don't want to be that person. I want to teach things that are radically human that can't be
Well,
eliminated.
and I think that's what we're grappling with right now with
Mm-hmm.
generative AI is that we believed, for example, music was radically human, or
Mm-hmm.
art was radically human, or poetry was radically human. And what generative AI has taught us is that yes, it is human, but it follows patterns, right?
Mm-hmm.
And AI is excellent at detecting and replicating patterns. The difference that AI will never, ever be able to replicate is meaning. So
Mm-hmm.
there are AI bands on Spotify that are ranking right now, right? Because we do like certain patterns of music and topics and things like that, but there's no story behind that music. There's no meaning behind it. Similarly, the quilts that I've made here, they are imbued with meaning that I've given them because I wanted to create what I did, and they have like the fabrics I picked and everything like that. AI will never be able to do that part. Now, AI can mimic, AI can learn patterns, AI can do all of those things, but it will never create from a place of meaning. And that's what will always remain sacredly human. And I think we need to remember that because
Yeah.
we do already have mass produced quilts. Those
Mm-hmm.
already exist. You can go on Amazon right now if you shop on Amazon or Walmart and buy a mass produced quilt that literally has pieces of fabric stitched together and quilted, and it was almost all done robotically. The pieces were cut robotically, potentially a human being sewed the pieces together, and then it was quilted robotically, right? Like
Or they're not sewed together. It's
what was
just
that?
printed, or it's
Some,
not sewed.
yeah,
It's just printed. Yeah.
some are just printed. You're exactly right.
Yeah.
Some are just
So
printed.
that takes the human element out of it completely, which is,
Exactly.
again, there's a market for it.
That
Mm-hmm.
already exists. And just like portrait painters who were afraid when the camera came out that there would never be a place for them in the world anymore, people still get their portraits painted. That is still
Mm-hmm.
a thing that happens. And it just changes. There are less
Yeah.
portrait painters than ever before. It isn't as viable a long-term life career. However, there is still meaning in a painted portrait, that still
Yeah.
exists and will still exist even as technology marches forward.
Yeah. Well, and the more we get imbued with this technology, I think the more we're going to seek out novelty will become what is radically human again. Like as we see so
Exactly.
much AI and we see so much like fake, our nervous system knows, even if our eyes don't. And then
Absolutely.
we'll like now I love buying street art. I love going places and buying things off the streets. Like, have you ever been to New Orleans?
Yes.
Love going to art markets and buying things off the street,
Yeah.
because that is now the novelty.
It's like a LP, an
Yeah.
album, a
Yeah.
vinyl record. That is why it is having such a resurgence, because that crackle when the needle hits the vinyl,
Mm-hmm.
the analog sound that comes out versus digitally produced CDs and MP3s, there is nothing like it. Like, we have albums from the 20s and 30s that we just love that sound. That's why flip phones are making a resurgence. That's why
Mm-hmm.
people are deleting tons of apps, off of their phones, because they want that return to something more human and natural. And I think I 100% agree with you. But all of that being true, using AI does not mean you're cheating. It is
Right.
another tool in the toolbox. That's it. It's another tool in the toolbox. You can try to be a Luddite and not use technology, but don't shame someone else for making a different choice.
Yeah, for sure.
We all have
Well,
agency.
yeah. At some point, I've had photographer friends talking lately about how everybody, like, iPhones take such good pictures now that nobody wants to book photo sessions anymore. And I'm like, that's not true. The people who are booking your portrait sessions are the ones who want your artistry. They want your
Vision.
ability to look at them. Yeah, your editing style. And she does great, but then she gets like kind of down on herself sometimes and she's like people just aren't booking like they used to. I think people aren't booking like they used to because it costs a fucking much to live right now. Like people can't afford a $3,600 photo shoot. That's why people aren't booking. Like she sells out her mini shoots and stuff. And I'm like what I'm paying for with a photographer is your vision, you know?
Exactly.
That's what makes us radically human is that vision that can't be replicated.
Exactly.
It's
And
the imperfections and that
and
just can't be
even
replicated.
even if you send a quilt off to a long armor that uses computerized quilting as part of her practice, and I'm not talking about pantographs that are all over whatever, but there are people who will use preset designs,
Mhm.
but they size it for the particular area that they're
Mhm.
quilting in and doing all of the stuff. Yes, they are using computerized designs, but they are adding their vision to how your quilt should be quilted.
Yeah.
They
It's
and
magic.
and so I'm going to choose this person over that person because I love how they fill white space better,
Mhm.
and there's still room for everyone at the table. And it goes to that scarcity mindset, right? There is still room for me who uses AI as part of my process sitting next to someone who doesn't choose to. That's fine. But chances are, if you've used grammar check, spell check, ever removed a background from an image for a pattern that you're creating, like you're using AI, it just might not be called that, or you're not aware that it is artificial intelligence, but you are probably using it.
I think if we had named AI anything else, people
Yeah,
wouldn't be up in arms over it.
exactly.
Yeah, because we've seen one too many movies that makes us go, "Oh hell no."
It does.
Yeah,
Absolutely. Absolutely.
because that's the term the movies used. Now that's the term we like our brains associate with evil and like eradicating humanity.
Mhm.
Um, and I just choose not to be so pessimistic about
Yeah,
technology.
but there are philosophers and ethicists looking at all of that. I might do a post on it. There's a thing, the paperclip problem. That's a big, big concern of people in the AI world, like making sure that we are building platforms that don't eradicate humanity, because there are logical pathways to where we optimize an AI enough. And so you should be aware, AI does have the potential to destroy humanity, destroy the earth, whatever, if we leave it unchecked, if we don't demand that companies employ data ethicists, if we, it is incredibly powerful, and there are horrible unintended consequences for something as simple as teaching an AI to make a paperclip more efficiently. It's a whole thing. I'll do a thing on it.
That is wild. Yeah, I'd be interested in
Yeah. If you run the thought experiment long enough, it will destroy humanity in the effort of making the most optimal paperclip.
That's wild.
Yeah, but again,
I would love to read all that.
AI has been around for 70 years. It is not brand new. This is just the latest next thing, and it's the easiest to vilify at the moment. But we have been using versions of artificial intelligence as assistive technology for decades. We are going to be okay provided we do not let greed and profiteering take over.
So, what steps should we be taking to avoid that?
Choose platforms that align with your values.
Okay.
On my website, I have a thing called Build Your Ethical Toolkit, and it gives you some recommendations on platforms that through my research, I believe tend to lean more ethically toward pro artist, pro creative.
Is this a free or a paid resource that you have?
It's free. The only thing I ask is email address. And
right. Okay.
Yeah, that's it. If you're an artist, you can opt out of data sets. And I provide in that toolkit a form letter that you can write. Make sure that you are voting for people who align with your values, because those people represent you in the rooms you're not in. And, demand that of the people who are in those rooms,
So, say our elected officials don't have the knowledge or education to make the decisions we want them to make. Is that our place to like compile something to be like, here's information I want you to read before you go vote on this thing?
If you want to be that participatory, absolutely. When I worked in the AI industry, we had people who met with lobbyists for the purpose of educating them on the risks and potential for bias in AI enabled decisions. And that's why, like the city of New York, if you are using software to make certain decisions and you are a company over a certain size, you have to disclose that AI was used as part of this decision. And we were advocating that people should have a right to understand how decisions were made so that there's algorithmic transparency.
So I'd be interested in reading your research and also like passing it on. We just had new elected officials. We voted yesterday. And to be able to send information, I'd rather people be educated and be able to send information rather than showing up with vibes. Just being mad about something does change things, but not necessarily in the way that they think it's going to, or it doesn't always have the intended effect. So the more information we have, the better decisions we can make. And the more professional we can look when we show up to talk to these people that make these decisions for us.
Yeah.
So, where can we find you and all of your stuff in your ecosystem?
Yeah, so the aiquilter.com, that's my website. I have a blog. I published a book called Digital Muse, which is how to bring AI into your creative process. And I talk extensively in there about AI versus artists, about data bias, about bias in image generation. I describe in much more detail how it works, because I fundamentally believe you need to understand how it works in order to make it work for you. I am on Instagram, Facebook, YouTube. I teach classes all around the country and world. I'm going to be doing on-demand classes later this year so that
exciting.
people can learn in their own time and in their own way. I do one-on-one mentoring. I help businesses use AI ethically to help optimize their daily lives and work lives and everything else. So yeah,
I love that. That's amazing. Well, thank you for being who you are and bringing this information to us, like as a community.
Yeah.
We need this, a lot of us tend to be stuck in our ways. There's a reason we choose crafts and hobbies and businesses based on, practices that are as old as time, and we don't necessarily like to change, myself included. It takes a lot for me to have a new opinion on things sometimes.
Well, and that's just it is all of us probably these days use rotary cutters without even thinking about it. But I promise
Yep.
you, it was drama in the 80s. It was
That is
serious
so
drama
crazy.
in the 80s. But we don't think about it. And think about whatever sewing machine you have. There was a point at which that was the devil. That was evil,
Mm-hmm.
terrible, bad. It was going to kill all kinds of industries. And yet, here we are. And we're all fine with using sewing machines.
I'm going to show you something really fast because you've brought this up. I'm going to show you the coolest thing. Hold on.
Okay.
This is the very first, not the first one ever, but the first generation of the Singer toy sewing machine.
Yes. Hang
And I
on.
keep this as a reminder that everything was new once. Everything is old and everything is new. And like this is a toy. This was what toys looked like 100 years ago.
Well, this is what toys looked like 50 years ago.
My kids
This
were like, no wonder kids were more capable back then. People didn't give them garbage.
this was my sewing machine when I was
That is
4.
so cute.
This is a Holly
I
Hobby
love
sewing machine.
that. Oh my gosh. How many people started with those? I love that.
I have a picture of me using a Holly Hobby sewing machine sitting on my dad's lap.
I love that. Everything is old and everything is new. Like always.
Always.
We just have to protect what's sacred to us, which for me is creativity above everything else.
Yes.
Thank
All
you
right.
so much for chatting with me. This ended up being crazy long. You're probably going to have to edit the ever loving ish out of it